Everybody, my name is Amanda McBride. I'm our Northeast Regional Lead for Accenture Ventures Open Innovation. And today I'm talking a little bit about enterprise startups and how you can land large contracts. So before I kind of dive into the startup portion of it, I'll talk a little bit about Accenture and who we are, so you have a little bit of background around what I do on the day-to-day. But we are a global professional services company. So we have capabilities within digital, cloud, security, among other technical, as well as outsourcing and operations capabilities. We also have capabilities on the interactive side around design, both product and marketing design. So really kind of filling that full gamut of consulting professional services. And so we have 506,000 people globally, quite a large group of folks. And so our ventures team, which is what I represent today, is really focused on building that bridge and connecting our startups to our clients, and then making sure that our clients are also well connected to the startup ecosystem. So in the Northeast, I really focus a lot on our major cities where we have Accenture offices, so Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Hartford, and Pittsburgh. And we work with different startups globally to help bring those solutions to our clients to help fill any innovation or technology gaps that they might have, or help solve any challenges that they might be facing, accelerate timelines, things like that. So like I had mentioned, we're the bridge. We're really focused on identifying startups that are high potential, that are solving really important critical problems for our client base, helping to de-risk those, partially by injecting some of our business knowledge into those startups to help them really create feature sets and functionality and products and joint offerings with us that are really kind of filling the market need out there. And then we help do POCs, making sure that it's getting the right level of executive attention when it needs it, so you can actually then go get to that full scale deployment phase and really get the full benefit of working with some of these startup and emerging technology partners. The way we function within Accenture is we're part of what we call the innovation architecture. So we are in good company in that framework with our research team, which is focused on doing research and understanding trends at a macro and micro level. Labs, which is looking at technologies that are 5 to 10 years in the future. It's a lot of PhD level folks that are doing a ton of great research, both industry focused, technology focused, all of the above, and combinations of both, right? Convergence, cross-functional. Ventures and innovation is really focused on technology that's out there now in the marketplace, with startups that are, although young, right? We work with a lot of young startups, but startups that are really working to solve these problems already. Studios is our rapid prototyping group, and they help to do a lot of the actual POCs with some of our startup partners. And then we have our innovation centers. So in the Northeast, we have an innovation hub in New York City, where we bring clients in to help solve problems or help workshop around different challenges that they're facing, to help kind of group and design think on how to resolve for those. And a lot of times our startup partners end up being parts of those days. And we also have another facility, another innovation hub in Boston. And then we have our delivery centers globally. So I think to transition more to how as an enterprise startup, you can land some of these large contracts. I figured I'd give a little bit of background on our new leadership and really what we're now focused on at Accenture in terms of working with our different partners to help kind of bring to light the assistance that some of these organizations like us can do to help. So Tom Lunabos is a 6-time Silicon Valley entrepreneur and CEO with multiple IPOs under his belt, and he is now our new global lead of ventures. And so his brainchild is Project Spotlight, which we just announced in the news a couple of days ago, actually. But the purpose of this is really to help bridge the most challenging part for startups, which is not actually bring that solution to market. It's not actually getting the funding, although sometimes those of you you who are in the entrepreneurship space know that can be difficult. It's really understanding the business problem that they're trying to solve for and solving for it in a way that's effective for the customer base. And so what we're trying to do is inject our knowledge of having most large companies globally as clients and understanding what their challenges are, what they're trying to solve for in the immediate term, and what they're looking at in the long term to actually help these startups really solve for that issue of that nuanced understanding of the enterprise problem. So part of what we're trying to do is invest knowledge capital along with the actual venture capital that our venture group is putting forward with some of these startups. So I think that's one of the things that's most critical as you're starting to work on your startup, especially if it's enterprise facing, is understanding the business problem that you're trying to solve really, really well and working that through with your customer base and with other folks that are regularly interfacing with your customer and might have some unique insight into those business challenges. Beyond that, I think the other large recommendation is really around building your network. And it kind of does tie into that last point around working with folks who are tied in or engaging with your customer on a regular basis and regularly interfacing with them. So I have a couple examples up here of folks that we work with at Accenture that many of our different startups work with, like Venture Cafe, which is sponsoring this event with us, are so kind as to host us for this event. Springboard Enterprises, which is a female-led accelerator incubator program that's focused on female entrepreneurs. Fabulous program that's been around for 20 plus years, run by Kay Koplovitz and Amy Millman. And so they work across industries with women founders to help get them into various businesses. And so Amy and Kay and the program are very well connected in with many various corporate businesses. And so that network enables a lot of these women to get visibility where they might not otherwise get visibility, enables them to get customers or talk to customers and get a unique perspective about the problems that they're facing. And that's really one of the value propositions of working with a larger partner who has some of these networks that you as an individual may not. XRC Labs is another one that we work with in New York. That's focused on retail. I think they're dipping their toes into health as well, among other areas. And so again, another accelerator program that has corporate sponsors. So, many different companies in the retail space actually work with them and are kind of on their groups of folks for a selection committee. So they'll actually sit in as the companies are being interviewed for selection into a cohort. So, as you get into some of those programs, that somebody is interested in the technology that you're working on or the problem that you're trying to solve. And it gives you a unique opportunity to actually get to interface with those folks, ask more questions, and then tailor your solution, tailor your business to really be addressing that problem, which really makes you as effective as possible. Something else that we're actually also pushing at the moment is our Black Founders Development Fund. So this was announced, I believe, about a month ago by our Global Open Innovation Lead, Kathy Ross. And so we're trying to be a model for change. I think it's less than 1% of venture capital funding goes to Black founders. And so given especially the spirit of today's conversation around equity and innovation, I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on this. And so what we're trying to do is really get those entrepreneurs included in the venture space and create new advancement opportunities for them. So doing that not only with the relationships and the networking that I had mentioned before, and we're really focused on making sure that we do have a solid network for these entrepreneurs, whether or not they end up being a good fit for our program or not, but making sure that we're helping to provide resources. And there's many organizations out there like ours that are focused on trying to help entrepreneurs. And so we also are looking at trying to be able to connect these entrepreneurs to other partners that are similar to us or that have similar missions. We're trying to connect these partners to the VC community, right? So I think where we really can impact change is in the strategic investment space, making sure that we're positioning folks and helping set them up for success in the investment space, connecting them with the community. So groups like Venture Cafe that have access to lots of different large corporate folks in the innovation space or otherwise, lots of entrepreneur groups that also, again, have resources, have experience, that really building your network piece that I was speaking to earlier. And then again, we're really pushing it from a thought leadership perspective as well, and some of that knowledge injection that I had spoken to earlier. So I have a couple of case studies that I can speak to, but I know we have a decent number of folks on the line. So before I do that, I'll take a pause and see if there's any questions around any of the content that I presented, or questions around a business that you're working on, or any other questions generically. I'm happy to take a moment to answer some of those. And you can either pop them into the chat or come off mute.
They may be typing, so they might just need a minute.
Figured I'd give a minute before I jumped into the case studies. No worries. Okay. I'm not seeing anything, but if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat, and maybe Gary, you can just let me know if something comes in there so that I can answer it. But I will pop into a couple quick case studies and real life examples to make it a little bit more real for y'all. So part of that announcement on Project Spotlight was the announcement of our investment in a startup called Hive, which is really focused on upskilling and reskilling. And so they are based in Canada, and their product is really focused on utilizing a quantum labor analysis methodology to be able to help us create a transformation in the labor market through reskilling, learning, upskilling, et cetera. So Hive has been a part of this journey with us for a few months now, and they've kind of worked with us on a global perspective, but we are working with them on a dozen or more use cases, mostly focused on where you have a population of resources where the job is changing. And maybe previously they were focused on having to work on one technology, but that technology is becoming obsolete, and now they're going to need to work on another technology. Being able to look at it from a skills perspective, understand this is the skill set that they have today, this is the skill set that future job requires, what's the gap, and how do I bridge that gap, and recommending training and courses and all those things to help actually close it. That's one of the many use cases that Hive fills. And so an example of how we've already worked together is we've worked in collaboration with Walmart and Unilever as part of an effort catalyzed by the World Economic Forum on future of work, to actually be able to create a 10-week pilot that's serving as a POC for reskilling and redeployment, kind of like I just explained that whole concept and that use case for them, but to actually help people remain productive as the market's changing, because as we all know, the skill set that's required for us to be relevant is constantly changing. And so tackling that problem with some other corporate partners. So the ability of large organizations to help make those connections and help get traction for large businesses also helps with those large kind of contracts like I had mentioned. And Marriott is another example. This is a case study that we have with Marriott, and we actually did it in coordination with another accelerator program, 1776, who also has a base here in Philadelphia at Pennovation. But so we worked with them to create a competition where we developed a program, helped source startups from the ecosystem to help participate in this program, and then worked with them to actually develop new solutions for Marriott. And they actually ended up moving forward with 3 of those and actually putting them into POC. So really interesting experiences, and those are kind of 2 just quick highlights just to kind of make it a little bit more real for y'all. Does that bring about any questions? I think that's actually the end of my content. So I'm happy to take any questions related to businesses you're working on, or questions about the space more generically. Happy to answer anything.
And everyone, again, please feel free to use the chat if you would like to type your questions there, or if you would like to unmute yourself, you can ask your question out loud as well. I can ask a quick question. It looks like, Mark, I don't know if you were going to jump in there, but I was going to actually ask Amanda if you have any case studies of working with universities at all.
I'm sure we do. I don't have them off the top of my head, to be perfectly frank. But I know, I believe in Texas, my colleague, Tom Rubenak, who was our Southwest lead, has worked pretty extensively down there with some universities in relation to healthcare. But I don't have the details off the top of my head, but I can get you that offline, Gary. Happy to share.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I was asking because I know Mark is at Rutgers, is running the iCore site there. I feel like there would be plenty of entrepreneurs working on enterprise level solutions that benefit from these relationships. So I was just generally curious.
Yeah, I also think we just made a announcement again like a week ago. I feel like we've had a whole slew of big announcements lately, and I don't want to do it a disservice. I'm not totally familiar with all the details, but we did announce a partnership with MIT where we're really focused on next gen technology and how we can kind of co-develop that together. So I don't know if it's really as much on the entrepreneur front, but we do work with universities on a regular cadence, especially our labs groups.
Yeah. Hi, Amanda. Mark DeGuzman from Rutgers University. I did want to ask, though, if your, Accenture works mostly with software types of technologies. I know you mentioned the MIT one, but do you also help out with the physical sciences or life sciences types of innovations, or is it primarily software?
Yeah, so we do.
Harder time horizon for the physical and life sciences than there is for the software?
Yeah, so we do any kind of enterprise technology. So a lot of it does end up being software solutions, but we do actually do a decent amount in the life sciences space. I have a colleague, Francis Bruce, based out of New York, who actually leads that for us within the ventures practice. And so a lot of the work that we do in that space is around helping to set up incubators or accelerators. It's also around the different technologies. So we've done some things around quantum and molecular similarity with clients and startups previously. So we definitely do play in that space as well. And from a hardware perspective, we do have an internal group called the Forge. And the Forge is focused on more of those hardware type solutions. And so although from a ventures perspective, I don't know how deep we've really what's the past tense of that, dove into that. But we do have a group that is focused on those types of products as well. And even, kind of from an upfront perspective, we have another group called What If Innovation that is really focused on the upfront strategy of actually creating a product from, conception. So saying, if you have a scooter today, right, and you're like, okay, well, I need a faster scooter. Well, it's like, okay, well, does it have to be a scooter, right? Could it be something else? What is the real goal? Is it transportation? You need faster transportation. Okay, that opens up a whole other world of opportunities. And then from that lens, actually helping and partnering with other groups like the Forge, like some of our other teams to actually design an actual product. So yeah, we do that as well.
Sorry, I have another follow-up question.
Sure.
Just to get a better understanding of like how large are the teams that work on these to help make these kind of translational projects happen? Like how long do they take and how big are the teams that help figure that out? Because most of our iCore teams are pretty small. They're just like, maybe two, three, 4 people. But I'm curious with Accenture and all the resources you guys have available, how big are the teams that help make these projects successful?
Yeah, so I mean, it varies. It depends on the size of the engagement and the ask. A lot of times the strategy teams are small to start, especially on the What If side, few people. And then as you're kind of progressing through, it kind of passes along to different parts of our organization. And so the team end to end actually ends up being on the larger side, probably because you have folks with so many different specialties as you're kind of handing it end to end. But each part of the process, which is kind of like a mini project in itself, is on the smaller side.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
Hi, I have a quick question. This is Vladimir.
Hello.
Hey, does Accenture invest and owns equity in the startups, or just a partnership?
So we do both. So we do invest in startup companies. That's the Accenture Ventures side of our house. That's headed up by Tom Lunabos and Jake Kaldenbaugh. And then the open innovation side of the house, which is where I'm focused, is really helping those startups to get traction and engagement with our client partners. And so I would say that yeah, we invest, but yeah, we also partner. So it's a bit of a combination. A lot of the companies that we're jointly going to market with our various clients are actually partnerships, but there's also a good portion of them that are investments. So yeah, solid mix.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
Amanda, could you tell us a little bit about like what your day-to-day looks like in your role specifically?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of my role is actually taking some of our partners that we prioritized in the region, given things that we know are gaining traction or areas where we know our clients are interested in, and making sure that we're creating campaigns around these various startup technologies and partners, that we have content ready so that we can share it internally with leaders, with our various account teams, so that our account teams are armed to bring the latest and greatest out to our clients. And so it's a bit of a sales motion to help those startups really land those large contracts in partnership with us. So lots of meetings and lots of content creation.
Yeah. And are you ever, I'm sure you are, but are you approached by startups that maybe are not currently enterprise focused, but you may see the potential and you sort of work with them to get to that point?
So enterprise in like size, you mean, or in focus area?
In focus area, like maybe they're, B2C.
Yeah. So, I mean, B2C is just usually out of where we play, just because of the nature of our business, because all of our clients are really large corporations. And so as we are working with, our clients, our goal is to bring them technology that will help them in their business. And so it's most often, B2B type technology. So I would say we very rarely play in the consumer space. I don't think, at least in my region, I really have any consumer products that are prioritized. Like, if an example, like a beverage company or something, it wouldn't be a good fit for us. But I think part of what we're trying to do, especially with the Black Founders Development Program, is, people do approach us with ideas and businesses all the time, and we always want to be helpful however we can. And so even though it's not a fit for us, making sure that in our local markets, so here in Philly and New York and Boston, that we do have a network of other accelerator programs or of other venture capital funds that we can kind of send some of these folks to, so that, they're not starting at ground zero, that they have, a warm handoff to somebody who's better positioned to help them based on their focus area.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I want to just remind everyone that you can feel free to ask any questions you'd like, whether it's in the chat or through unmuting yourself. I will ask just one more question. So Amanda, for all of the startup founders who are listening, how might they learn more about, the programs and resources that are available, and how do they sort of take those next steps?
Yeah. So, I mean, Accenture obviously isn't the only one, right? Especially if you're focused on consumer. There's definitely other organizations that are a better fit for you. But I mean, you have a great resource and you're already starting to do the right things by participating in something like Venture Cafe and getting involved at the CIC, right? Because there's other entrepreneurs there who know other successful founders who at one point were invested in. And so they know folks that they can help refer you to. There are corporate innovation groups who come to these events. And so trying to connect with somebody who is in the innovation space in your area of interest, doing cold reach out, but reaching out with a real understanding of a problem that somebody's struggling with gets you so much further. To be able to say, hey, I know that this is an issue for y'all, and this is what we're doing to try to help. If you're interested, like, please reach out. I think we can drive XYZ value for you, right? So a lot of it is about framing. And then I think some of the other resources I had mentioned earlier, Springboard, XRC, there's plenty of accelerator groups out there that are looking to help. Philly Startup Leaders is a really amazing one. I think I saw that Bridget's on the call. So, I mean, there's some really amazing groups. And I would imagine probably most of you are local to Philadelphia. And so we're really lucky that we have a community that is so focused on helping Philadelphia really be this like economic entrepreneurial hub. And so there are more and more resources all the time. And so asking somebody like myself to make an introduction for you, or even just picking our brain on a business problem and helping you like think through that. There's plenty of us who are willing to help you all take that next step and figure out, what that is based on where you are.
Hi, I have a quick question. I just came in a little late. I'm not from Philadelphia. Are you guys open to people who are not from Philadelphia?
Yeah, I only mentioned Philadelphia because I know we're partnered with the Venture Cafe in Philadelphia for this particular event. But yeah, so I mean, Accenture is a global company. So we have actually ventures teams on the ground in 40 plus countries. Yeah, okay. We're all over the place.
So are you also, with your job, are you guys focused on technology that's related to blockchain? You mentioned B2B solutions.
Yep, blockchain is one of the segments that we focus on. So yeah, we definitely have a lot going in the blockchain space.
Right. Is it possible if I connect with you after this, and I have a few questions after? Because I'm working with a female cybersecurity expert. She's the co-founder. Are you also focused on non-profit corporate organizations, or is it primarily private corporations?
In terms of clients?
Yeah.
We do both. Yeah.
Great.
We're primarily corporates, but we do have some nonprofit clients as well.
Okay. So any projects that you're working on with blockchain, and what are the use cases?
So there's a bunch. We can talk about those offline if you'd like, and I can kind of give you a little bit more specific information.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to connect. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
I'll ask a question, Amanda. So given, kind of the pandemic and the fact that you're probably not out as much as you typically are, kind of meeting folks where they are, what is your mechanism for getting out and reaching the community? How do you do that?
Hey, Tracy. Yes. And so you're right. It's been, and I think we're all probably struggling with this right now too, right? It's like, how do you get that visibility? And so we're doing things like this where we're presenting and trying to get the word out, and we've also done a series of press releases. Like I said, I think we've had a lot of announcements in the past couple of weeks, especially around ventures with Black Founder Development Fund, with Project Spotlight. So, I mean, we're doing things in terms of like getting the word out about what we're doing. For getting out into the community, it's really reaching out to our different community partners. So it's reaching out to the Springboards of the world to understand, okay, which which startups are you seeing? And we have kind of a thesis that we're working around in terms of specific technologies that we think are interesting, or specific business challenges that we're trying to solve for. And so we're constantly scanning and on the lookout and talking to our various contacts in our local markets. And that's part of the benefit of being a 506,000 person company and being, on the ground in 40 plus countries from a ventures perspective, is that, we are pretty tied into our local communities. We have contacts in various accelerators. We go to startup ecosystem events, even though now they're more virtual, actually probably all virtual. I don't think I've been to an in-person event in gosh knows how long, almost a year now, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, still trying to maintain our connection the best way we can. Given COVID, I can't wait to get back out there and get to meet more folks in person and really be able to go to more events. But we do track our local partners and try to show up to as much as we can to meet as many people as possible.
And what is the kind of sales that you typically are seeing for you to kind of make those introductions for your corporate clients? Is there like a certain revenue level that they need to be at, or is it maybe not revenue based, it's some other scale based?
Yeah, it's not really revenue based at the beginning. So usually what we think about is the market for like how prevalent is this client problem? How big is the problem? How many clients are struggling with it? And then I think from there, it's more about understanding, a lot of times clients, are not ready to do like a full blown deployment right away. And that's where, the sales get a lot larger for us and for startups, right? But a lot of times they want to start with a POC. And so sometimes it's an investment on the side of the startup, or sometimes it's an investment by our account teams because we think this is really important for our client. We want to, show them that, hey, if you really deployed this at scale, there's really big value. Let me show you that it really works. If the technology is like really new and innovative. And then a lot of the times it's a small sale because it's a POC, it's a paid POC. So it really varies by the solution, the technology, the amount of effort it is for all parties and the value it's driving. So I would say definitely more value on the size of the problem and the number of clients that it's applicable to, rather than the size in terms of revenue of an individual sale.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks, Tracy.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Any other questions?
Hi, Amanda, it's Mark again.
Mark.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how do you get your clients? Do they must approach you, but usually the startups are starting out small, right? They don't really have big budgets to have a big firm help them. So I'm curious on how a young startup with no sales and just a technology and an idea, maybe a few patents, how do they kind of get you to work with them to get their technology out there with the right people?
Yeah. So it has to be a good fit for us, right? So we look for technologies where there is a services component for us, so that it really ends up being a joint go-to-market offering. So, sometimes where it's applicable, we might make an introduction from a client to a particular startup, even if there's no services opportunity for us. If we think it's a technology that's, new, exciting, cutting edge, and our client has to have it. Or if our clients asked us for an introduction and we happen to know that company, we'll do that. But the majority of our interactions and how we're bringing startups to clients is because there's a joint go-to-market offering. So the same way we would work with any of our large, technology ecosystem partners like a Salesforce or an SAP, right, where they have a technology platform, and Accenture has services that we, jointly then provide to the client to actually get, SAP or Salesforce up and running in the way that they want, right? It's the same thing with the startup partner. So it's where there's a technology product and there's services for us to be had around it. We'll work together to design an offering. And it's really about identifying and finding those startups that are solving those really big problems in a unique, differentiated way. And so that's primarily what we look for is this problem really big? Is it a really prevalent problem? Is there knowledge capital that we have that we can help inject into the startup to help make the startup solution more impactful and effective? Do we have services that we can wrap around this particular startup or technology that, again, helps make it more value add to the client? And then, can we bring this to clients, and many of them?
So you really help them not just connect them, but you actually help them implement on a larger scale that they couldn't do alone.
Yeah.
Oh, great. That does sound like a really good partnership.
Yeah. Win-win for everybody. Client, startup, and us.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have almost the opposite question of before, which is, I know you're relatively new in your role and certainly have a fondness for Philadelphia, but have there been any Philadelphia success stories that you've been able to, kind of integrate so far that you can share? Good question. The can I share part is the interesting part. We do have a health startup partner, and I'll just kind of de-identify because I'm not sure what I'm allowed to share or not at this point. But we do have a health venture partner in Philadelphia that we've worked with and have integrated into our Intient solution. And so we're jointly going to market in the analytics space in health with lots of our clients there. And so that is a local success story. Great. Any other questions?
If there aren't any other questions, I will ask one more. And we were talking about it sort of before we got started. But Amanda, what are you excited about tonight? Like, we have a full lineup of sessions, and I'm just curious about, what you're interested in.
I'm really excited about the panel. Really excited. So I highly recommend everybody stick around and join that panel. I think the panel itself, I think, starts at like 5:20 or 5:25, something in that time range, and runs till about 6. But it's an all-star lineup. Kathy Ross is going to be the one who's moderating, and Kathy is my global lead for Accenture Ventures Open Innovation, and she is just amazing. And so I'm so excited to see her moderate a panel with some other really amazing women. Katika Roy, who's the founder of Pipeline Equity, which is a startup focused on closing the gender gap in both pay equity and in like hiring equity. So I mean, really awesome. And she's, well-known speaker in that space, knows the space inside and out. So excited to hear from her, excited to hear from Shelly Archambault, who is on the Verizon board and has just an amazing story. And just, I think you can probably see it in the chat. Mark was so kind as to put the link to Shelly's new book in there called Unapologetically Ambitious. She has an amazing story, and the book is totally worth a read. She's going to be doing an interview with Jack Pryor, who's our Northeast MU lead, is what we call him, but effectively like our Northeast region CEO. He's going to be interviewing Shelly from 5 to 5:20, 5:25, I think, and then we're running this panel, and so Shelly's pulling double duty and also participating on the panel, to be awesome. And then Susan Chapman Hughes, who's an executive at Amex and is also just, such a powerhouse story. So I'm really excited to hear from those women and get their perspective on equity and innovation, and hear about some of the advice and thoughts they have around how the market's changing, and specifically what they're all doing actively to make the market really change. Should be awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Awesome. Anything else, guys?
Good. Thanks, Amanda.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for having me. You guys were super great audience. I loved all the questions. And if there's anything I can do to be helpful or connect anyone offline, please feel free to reach out. I did put my email in the chat box.
Thank you again, Amanda.
Thanks,